How do we solve this? How do we fix the world, Shae?
Oh, how do we fix the world? Great question. Cool. I'm glad that we're...
No pressure.
I wanted to talk about this. I mean, it's always an inside job. You know,
That's a tough concept for people to get, though.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing, because when you haven't done the inner work, it's like your experience of life is everything's outside of you, right?
Yes.
And to say that we can fix the world, which is everything outside of us, by just working on ourselves, it's like, it's a hard pill to swallow for people.
Yeah, and it's also like it becomes a platitude that doesn't carry weight to it. So then we think about, all right, if it is about doing the inner work, how do we help others do the inner work? Maybe like asking a different question, right? Because that's like my core answer is, how do we fix the world? You know, it's
I agree.
Deep presence with yourself.
I agree 100%. Like if we all just did that, there wouldn't be any issues.
So it's like, all right, how can we invite others to embody that then? So that's from embodying that, and then more of us leading that through expressing ourselves, right? Through putting content like this out into the world, through what I do in my work. You know, I record videos, podcasts, I share in my programs, I write, and sharing, like really sharing and spreading in this ripple effect, that others who maybe have no concept of inner work can first have a concept of, oh, there's other worldviews than my own. There's other ways to live than how I'm living. And then hopefully that again, like more people can rise into that and be invited into that. We're not going to invite someone in by trying to force them in. We think about our own consciousness, right? And what voices are we listening to? What voices will we amplify? When we want to reprogram, make changes in our lives, change our beliefs, then we have to be keenly aware of which voices we're listening to. Is it the voice of insecurity, fear, trauma? And which voices do we want to amplify? And when we're first starting out that work, it takes like so much effort to amplify the voice that isn't as conditioned in us, because we're not used to listening to that, because it's not familiar. When things are not familiar, they're uncomfortable. We seek comfort in the familiar. In the long term, it's not comfortable.
And it doesn't matter what it is. It's scary to put yourself out there and not know where your voice is going to land.
Yeah,
it's scary.
Yeah. So when we amplify the voices within, and when we are able to start living from those, that's like the internal way that we can transform. So if we take that into the world and say the world is this collective consciousness and all of these voices are like the voices we have within us, how can we amplify the voices that will create the shift? So that's what we're doing. And we're not just like, well, I've done the inner work so I can sit back and twiddle my thumbs or go and live like on a mountain and I've like done my part. It's like, no, you do that. And then through your authentic way, amplify your voice. Invite others into the world that is yours.
Yeah, there's this kind of misconception, I guess, that, in the spiritual communities, or when you start doing this work, it's like, you can just do that and then you can disconnect from the rest of the world. Now, that happens a lot.
So much.
But that's not where the power is. The power is in embodying that, as you talk about, being that. Like being the essence of that, but bringing that fire to the world. So how do people become great communicators? What are the what are the critical elements?
And there are critical elements too. So great question. Listening is actually like one of the biggest parts of it. Being able to listen deeply so you can actually respond, and listen deeply as well to not only what's being said, but the ability to listen deep enough to what's actually being meant.
To understand, listen to understand.
Yes, not to listen to understand, not to respond.
Because if you listen to understand, you can pretty much remove judgment.
Yeah.
When you listen to hear, when you listen to respond,
or when you listen to be right, or when you listen to convince.
You're going to, well, if you listen to respond, you're going to be coming from the filter of
what will I say?
What will I say? And that's coming through the lens of what I think is right or wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think one of the biggest maybe wounds we can say around relationships especially is people just don't feel heard. They don't feel understood. And what that makes us feel is they're not connected.
Yeah.
Now, to communicate is to connect. But a lot of us are not communicating to connect. We're communicating to, again, try to be right.
Or to avoid triggers or to avoid conflict.
Which is just creating internal conflict within yourself if you're avoiding something that's true.
Because you can't share what's true to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So keys to communication, really listening deeply, listening to what's being said underneath the words. Maybe what they're meaning is something else, and maybe you can actually feel that. And then taking ownership for the words that you're saying.
Yeah.
So taking ownership for your experience, if you're communicating your experience with a partner, not saying something like, you made me feel like this, or when you did that, I feel like this because you did that. It's really actually, and I've been doing little videos on this on Instagram recently. It's like, I feel like this right now as a response to what has happened. Or my story is this. I have this story from what happened with us. I would love to understand what happened for you and to really genuinely want to understand.
Yeah.